Good day, everyone, and welcome to the podcast of BAELS 2103, the podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of language. I am Maureen.
And I am Jarella. Today we're tackling a topic that both incredibly complex and surprisingly relevant to our everyday lives, which is speech acts.
Exactly. We all use speech acts constantly, whether we realize it or not. But what exactly are they?
Great question. Think of speech acts as the actions we perform through language. It's not just about the words themselves, but the intention behind them. When you say hello, you're not just uttering sound, you're performing the act of greeting someone. Similarly, when you say I promise to be there, you're making a commitment.
That's a really helpful way to put it. So, how do these speech acts contribute to the construction of meaning?
Well, speech acts are crucial because they create context. They tell us how to interpret the word that follows. Imagine someone saying, "It's cold in here." Depending on the context, this could be a simple statement of fact, a request to close a window, or even a complaint. The meaning changes based on the implied speech act.
That's a great example. Can you give us another instance of how speech acts shape our understanding of meaning?
Absolutely. Think about the difference between a statement like "the door is open" and a command like "open the door." Both use the word open, but the speech act changes the meaning entirely. The statement simply describes the state of the door, while the commands direct someone to take actions.
So, it's not just the words, it's the way they're used. And what about the role of context in all this?
In a nutshell, Maureen, a speech act is anything we do with language. It's not just about the word themselves, but the action those words perform. Think about it. When you say "I promise," you're not just stating a fact, you're making a promise. That's a speech act.
That's a great starting point, Jurella. Let's break down the different types. There are three main categories: locutionary, elocutionary, and perlocutionary acts.
Right. The locutionary act is simply the act of saying something. The literal meaning of the words, for example, saying "the door is open."
Then we have the elocutionary act, which is the intended meaning or force behind the utterance. In our example, the elocutionary act might be an invitation to enter, a warning about a draft, or even a subtle suggestion to leave. It depends entirely on the context.
And finally, the perlocutionary act is the effect the utterance has on the listener. Maybe hearing "the door is open" makes someone feel welcome, or maybe it makes them nervous about security. This is the effect on the listener.
So, the same words can have vastly different elocutionary and perlocutionary forces depending on the situation. Think about saying, "It's cold in here." One person might interpret that as a request to turn up the heat, while another might take it as a simple observation.
Precisely, and this is where things get really interesting. The success of a speech act often depends on factors beyond the word themselves. Things like context, shared understanding, and the relationship between the speaker and the listener.
Absolutely. Think about the concept of felicity conditions. For a speech act to be successful, certain conditions must be met. For example, a marriage vow requires the speakers to have the authority to get married and the intention to do so.
And if those conditions aren't met, the speech act can be considered unhappy or unsuccessful. Imagine someone pretending to marry you without the legal authority. That's not a valid marriage vow.
So how does all this relate to the construction of meaning?
Well, meaning isn't just inherent in the word themselves. It's co-created through the interaction between speaker and listener. Based on the context, the speech act being performed, and the shared understanding between them.
It's a dynamic process, not a static one. The meaning isn't fixed, it's negotiated and interpreted.
And that's why studying speech act is so crucial. Understanding how language performs actions help us to better understand communications, both its successes and its failures.
So, to wrap things up, speech acts are more than just words. They're actions performed through language. Understanding the different types of speech acts and the conditions of their success is key to effective communication.
And recognizing the dynamic nature of meaning constructions, how it's co-created through interactions, allows for a deeper appreciations of the power and complexity of human language.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast of BAELS 2103. Join us next time as we explore